everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a great game for the Jets. 5-1 victory over the Ottawa Senators. If technical difficulties are our brand, we are at the apex mountain of the Kenny and Renny show here today as we've been figuring some stuff out behind the scenes. We've had a very patient audience behind the scenes here as we've been trying to make sure that we broadcast this so that everyone can watch it. Last time we did it on YouTube, there was a 10-second delay, which was very confusing because Renny was giving great takes, but the delay meant that they were booing at Ken, and it sounded like they were booing at Sean, at Renny. Clearly, that wouldn't be the case. That would never happen. We needed to fix that. That cannot stand that anyone would think that was happening. So we're taking care of that. But absolutely great game here tonight. Great atmosphere. Last game, I believe, as Kenny trashes the place and behind the scenes here, last game was a 3-2 loss to the Seattle Kraken, which I think left, the room was a little kind of gut punched by that. I don't think anyone thought at the time the Seattle Kraken were what we see from them right now. But tonight was one of those great nights where we had an engaged audience, a lot of goals for people to get really excited about. And you want to know how you have an engaged audience? Well, the last goal of the game in garbage time is a goal by Cole Perfetti. And I think this room blew up more than for any other goal the entire game. Because I think we all know Cole Perfetti needs a goal. We know he needs one out there. So that's maybe a monkey off their back moment. I know that one of the people that I was talking to said, look at him. He's not even celebrating. I don't know. But what do you do? What do you do after you've been on the schneid for a while? Do you celebrate like crazy for a goal, or you just kind of exhale and let it go? We'll see what Kenny has to say about that. I don't know. He doesn't score very often. He may be the perfect guy to talk about something like this. But quick rundown of the game before I bring Kenny in here. I take a look at that game. I don't think it was necessarily the Jets' best. I think what you saw from them coming out of that game was a team that was struggling the way that we'd seen them struggle for games before that. But what I like about this is the Jets, no one can debate this. The Jets are a better team than the Ottawa Senators. And on a night like tonight, what they do is they just allow that to slowly work its way through the game, keep a defensive posture for a good chunk of the game. But at one point, you can see it. They just take that game over. And rather than kind of wilting after a little bit, they just keep that going and going and going and pushing. And all of a sudden, the puck's in the back of the net. All of a sudden, the puck's in the back of the net again. Suddenly, it's 3-1. They keep pushing throughout the game right till the final bell. I love that they did that. I love that Cole Perfetti goes and gets that last goal with not a lot of time left on the clock. I love that Axel Jonsson-Fjällby is going out and to a degree for him as well, getting off the schneid, finding a really nice pass to Mark Scheifele in the process. This is the kind of game I think that shakes off whatever I think was the funk that the Jets had found themselves in ever since that really great game that they had in Pittsburgh. I feel like we haven't seen their best. And while I didn't think that this was their best, I thought that this was a good ramp-up game for the Winnipeg Jets, and to get certain players off the schneid the way they did, and to get the lines working a little better than that little bit of a debacle that we saw of the lines that Bones put together in the last game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I like it. I like it a lot. I think there's a lot to build on here, a lot to go forward with. That's my take on it. If you want to get the take of the other guy on this show, you may know the guy. He's got the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny. So that was an awesome moment. So in behind the scenes here, people are cranking out and singing along.
Yeah, let me in. Let me in, bud.
Show here, Ken. Join here. First of all, I want to say this. I didn't know we were having a sleepover tonight. We look like two kids wearing our pajamas, wearing the same shirt. to the same event. I don't know what happened here. I'll tell you this right now: the boys of Vittorio Rossi, Frankie and the boys would have never let this happen. They would have made sure that you looked like this, I looked like this, wearing the same thing. I'd like to say it's embarrassing, but I kind of think it's cute,
really
Ken.
not.
I think we look a little bit cute here tonight. I had the Winnipeg Sports Talk hoodie on for a bit just to, hide the effect of it. But why hide it? We're coming together. You can sleep over at my place tonight if you need to, buddy.
Secretly, you're mad I'm not wearing a Sean's Headband shirt. Be honest.
It would have shown some support. I don't know. I'm wearing your shirt. You could have worn mine, but that's okay.
Just a one-way street here, eh? One-way street in this relationship.
Kenny, fun moment here as we were playing your music. We've got Tristan Rivers in here, a guy that we wanted to pay tribute to here tonight. He's the man behind all the great music on our show. I've had so many conversations about him here tonight, and behind the scenes when the music was playing, we're having a little bit of audio issues. So the audience started singing out your music in the background. And I looked over, I wanted to see what Tristan was thinking here, because Tristan's the guy hitting the notes here, and I love the audience. They tried, but they weren't hitting those notes. They weren't coming close. They weren't coming close. But it would be, you know what it would be? It would be like people trying to sing his music and like hit those high notes. Would be like a guy like T. Will trying to hit my takes on the show. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. You just can't reach that level. By the way, T. Will has told me. T. Will has told me to hold on. He's got something coming for today. Now that I've said it out loud, it better happen. He was laying the threats down. He's got to back him up now. Kenny, I've ranted for long enough. What do you think of that game?
Yeah, impressive effort by the Jets on most levels for sure. Can you hear me now? Because normally I would just say you don't listen to me anyway, but I hope that you can finally hear me. Tidy effort is what I would say. I mean, what have we been harping on for the last 3 games? Oh, the Jets only had 4 goals, but one of them at even strength. What do they do today? They score 3 times at even strength, a couple of beauties. A couple of kind of bounce goals, whatever you want to call them, but impressive. I'm more impressed with the structure. I mean, the Jets' structure had been breaking down a little bit. One day they were giving up too many chances. The next time it was just too many grade A chances. Either way, it was a loss, 2 losses to start this road trip. This was a game the Jets needed. Ottawa was playing on a back-to-back. They kind of hung around for a while, and then the Jets kind of pulled away. But I think the most impressive part was they kept to their defensive structure. They got excellent goaltending, and their special teams once again coming through. 2 for 8 with the man advantage, but more importantly, 4 for 4 with the penalty kill. Senators have, I think, they're a top 5 penalty or power play unit going into the game. So this was a game that they needed. I mean, whatever. We're not going to overreact in game 47 one way or the other, but after consecutive losses, the Jets needed a sound effort, and I think that's exactly what they got. And also, too, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Mark Scheifele had a couple of bad blunders in the last game, and what did he do today? He didn't let those things linger. He didn't get tentative or, start cheating for offense. He played a sound game. He looked up and had 27 and 28, and just like that, he's back on pace for around 50 goals. So, I mean, I understand some folks in the chat room were pretty down on Mark the other night, but let's remember, when you have that level of offensive ability, sometimes you're going to have an off night. He had one off night, and he bounced back with 2 goals in the next game. I thought it was an impressive effort by him. Carson Kuhlman comes out of the press box, back on a line with Adam Lowry. I mean, we'll see if he stays in or not. Sam Gagner, I think, was scratched for the 3rd time in 4 games. That'll be something that we continue to monitor as we move along here. And another thing, too, on the back end, the Jets made the change that you and I anticipated. And lo and behold, there's Dylan Samberg all over the place on the penalty kill. So I thought it was a tidy effort on a lot of fronts. And Sean, when it comes, I don't care when you score. I don't care what league you're in. I don't care how long it's been. But if you've gone 15 without, I'm going full Selly. Like, that's a double fist pumper. I understand it's 5-1, and there's a lot of act like you've been there before, but I don't know. I would have preferred the old, grab the monkey and toss it into the stands, whatever. Have a little fun with it, Cole. I mean, you're in the NHL. You're having a great time this year. Don't be afraid to, Selly it up a little bit. I would have been in favor of the Selly, but I also understand Cole's a little bit more of a reserved guy. And he was probably sour that it took him that long to score, and that's probably why he didn't react. And also, too, it's a kind of garbage time goal. But hey, They don't ask how they don't ask how, they ask how many. And for Cole Perfetti, that was an important goal for him and what has been an important season for him on a lot of fronts. And I mean, we'll get into it in a while after we step away from the buffet here, but I do think that Rick landed on some lines that we can both get behind, and I don't think we were behind the lines that were rolled out the other night.
Not at all. Talking about getting behind the buffet, I got behind the buffet here at Trans-Canada Brewing Company here tonight, as did everybody else. I tried to try every single bite of food that they had here. I think I was stealing pieces of pizza off other people's plates at one point. The food was so good here tonight. Makes us want to talk about our friends and our gracious hosts here at Trans-Canada Brewing Company. And one of the best ways to talk about them, the way that people have already been doing so in the chat room, because they know what they got to do, is to talk about our Lamplighter of the game. Kenny, what was your Lamplighter?
Oh, it's Scheifele's backdoor tap. Really nice play by Blake Wheeler on the drop pass, and then Axel Janssen-Fjallby with just an absolute beauty on the tape of Mark Scheifele. For that goal. I mean, what an exceptional job of puck movement. Axel Janssen-Fjallby comes off the bench on the line change, joins the rush, and just makes an incredibly heads-up play after Blake Wheeler left it for him. And it didn't get a lot of love here, but I mean, Blake Wheeler, Sean, 900 NHL points with that effort tonight. And we've talked a lot about Blake Wheeler this year, guys, but I mean, man, that's 900 points in 1,084 regular season games. Just an absolute incredible milestone for someone who is not quite done yet. Has had a really good year, and nice job by Blake. I mean, I obviously got that goal that bounced in off of, or redirected. Let's just say it was redirected, and a great setup for point number 900. And Blake always said, even in those years where he's putting up 91 and setting records, he doesn't really care about those accolades, but that's one you're going to look back on in your career at some point, either in the off season or when you retire, and say 900 plus is a remarkable achievement, and he should be saluted with a TCB stick tap with maybe one of the mini sticks in the background for that achievement.
No doubt. You know what? You brought it up. I think I'd throw mine. And granted, it's not the prettiest goal, but I like this goal for a very specific reason. The Blake Wheeler goal, not only because of the accomplishment that he creates, but it's not a pretty goal. Bounces in off him. He goes to the front of the net. But what did we talk about with the lines yesterday and what we thought Rick Bowness was trying to achieve? I think he was getting those players apart last game, and he was trying to put Blake Wheeler on a line with Pierre-Luc Dubois and with Kyle Connor, because he was trying to get him to go to the net. What have we talked about this year? Where's Blake Wheeler had most of his success? It's right in front of the net, redirecting pucks, having pucks bounce in off him like they did tonight, tapping in those rebounds. That's where he's been most effective this season. The reason I like that goal is because if I'm Rick Bowness, I tried to send a message last game. That message was not received. Players were supposed to do a certain thing. They were supposed to respond to the challenge that their coach had given them, and they did not respond to that challenge, but they do that tonight. So if I'm Rick Bowness and I see that goal from Blake Wheeler, that goal, despite not being the prettiest goal, the nicest goal, the best hands, that is evidence to me that my players are buying into what I want them to buy into. And I think one thing that we've seen, no doubt this season, is when the Winnipeg Jets are at their when the Winnipeg Jets are
yes,
at their
sir.
best. That's you, Eric. You're getting the show. You're getting the laugh.
Yes,
over
sir.
Here. You've derailed the show with your humor. What are you doing over here? If you're the coach, one thing that we've seen this season is that this team is at its best when it follows the Rick Bowness blueprint. And so to me, that's just a sign of the players that may have strayed from the Rick Bowness blueprint returning to that blueprint. If I'm Rick Bowness, that's my favorite goal. Not the prettiest, but if Rick Bowness were watching this show right now under an alias, I think right now he'd be giving the Lamplighter to the Blake Wheeler goal. Very well deserved.
Honorable mention, Morrissey backdoor to Nikolai Ehlers,
we
too.
had Kenny's Lamplighter. If you are interested in the Lamplighter, and you should be, because it's frosty and it's delicious and it's everything that God intended a beer to be, you got to head on down, or not head on down, share with us your Lamplighter, your best goal of the game, and you are automatically entered to win a TransCanada Brewing Company 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. Those 8-packs are flying around this place tonight. Good stuff. If you can't wait, though, for Kenny and Renny to hand one to you, head on down and see the good folks in their tap room at TransCanada Brewing Company at 11290 Kenniston. Absolutely great food, like everyone here experienced tonight. Just pizza to die for, great drinks. I've got a real good selection of beers behind me here. My computer seems to have frozen up, so we're locked in on this for a bit, but that's okay. We're going to make it work one way or another. But yes, that's the TransCanada Lamplighter, and I want to hand out our Lamplighter from the last show, and David Zirk. I haven't seen if David Zirk is in the chat room, but David Zirk is on the clock. You know what to do. You direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds and give me your full name and your email address, and I will send you a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. You're on the clock, David. Game tomorrow night, Ken? I'm so busy with what's going on here.
6 p.m. versus the Philadelphia Flyers.
So this is one of those quick turnarounds. So David Zirk, you
don't worry, I've got you covered. Don't worry, I've got you covered.
Oh, there you go. Right on. Well, hey, I don't even have to do a segue. Ken, what's your got you covered? Your Johnston Group got you covered play of the game.
Yeah, honorable mention to Rick Bonus's grandson for bringing the joy level up at practice today. At practice at the morning skate, Rick talking about it with Paul Edmonds on the CJOB pregame show. You could just see the joy that he brought to Mr. Bonus, and also, I mean, the players seem to always rally when there's youngsters and kids around. But the actual got you covered. A guy that wears number 17. Stepping in. Morgan Barron does not need to fight Austin Watson after an accidental bump into Anton Forsberg. Adam Lowry jumped in. He didn't actually get to fight Mr. Watson, but he did grab another Senators player and landed a couple of absolutely massive right hands to the noggin. So for me, Adam Lowry, in a game where he nearly broke his own goal-scoring drought, rattling one off the post, and he just did an exceptional job on the penalty kill. For a good measure, he stepped in and stepped up for a teammate late, and that's why I've got Adam Lowry as my choice as the We've Got You Covered play of the game, or in this case, player of the game, sponsored by our good folks, the OGs from the Johnston Group.
So this goes back to the point I was making the other day about Arbor Jack-I. This is another time Adam Lowry wins this fight, and I think he wins it quite handily. Now, he's not the kind of guy who absolutely drops people. I to be honest with you, Ken, I don't know. I can't remember the last time I've seen one of those fights in the NHL where two warriors just slug it out and are covered in blood and all that kind of stuff. But Adam Lowry wins that fight, and I know that there were some people after I made this comment in the last show and that brought up a couple examples of fights that they thought Adam Lowry had lost. But I mean, I remember him fighting Ryan Reeves. I remember there is not
that was a great
guy
tilt
that he will not stand up against in this league, and this is just another example tonight. Adam Lowry walks into these things, and there's not a shred of fear in this guy. And whether you win a fight or lose a fight, I think what your teammates want to see from you is a guy that is just going to walk in and with no reservations stand up for you. And that's, I think, definitely what the Winnipeg Jets saw from their teammate tonight. But I also think it's disheartening on the other side of things when teams want to get a rise out of another team and they head towards a guy. They want to see a guy have reservations about fighting someone, which I think, again, Jack-I with Montreal, I think that's one of the kind of secret sauces that he's brought so quickly to this league, is he kind of walks into those fights with kind of a zealousness. And I think it emboldens your teammates when that happens. I think Adam Lowry is one of those guys that allows the Winnipeg Jets to stand that much taller whenever they're around him. And when he makes moves like that, and when he takes care of business like that, you just know that there's a guy. You don't have to worry about that getting out of hand, because Adam Lowry is going to take care of it, and he's very capable of taking care of it. I think you're entirely right. I'll give that to you for the Johnston Group. Got you covered play of the game. The Johnston Group, you won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and Teladoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. Ken, I wanted to bring it back to something we talked about a little bit earlier. I'll get at it in a different way. It was Hockey Day in Canada. So myself and Colin, our cameraman, were out at the Hockey for All Center to shoot a couple shots. We had a young lady who is a sledge hockey player for Team Canada. Started at 13 and was on Team Canada by the time she was 14. Really interesting case. Alyssa White, her name was. Absolutely phenomenal. While we were shooting our spot for Hockey Day in Canada, there was a hockey game going on below us. And I looked down, I was like, I recognize some of these guys. I know some of these people. And sure enough, there was one Ken Weeb skating around on the ice in a men's league game. And you had said earlier that if you were Cole Perfetti and you broke that goal drought, you would have celebrated like crazy. Well, I got to say, Ken scored a goal in that game. I didn't think it was going to happen, but I think he was like sliding on his knees, playing the stick like a banjo. It was like a 2-1 game out there. So I when he said that, I was like, I've got the proof. This guy would celebrate like that if it was his opportunity.
Hey, if Colin was here, he would tell you the truth. I acted like I'd done it before, even though it's pretty rare, as you said.
Full disclosure, Colin and I were watching the game, and it looked like it was a good crew out there. And I'd said to him, I don't think Kenny's going to get one in this one. And you potted it. So I was proud of you. Good for you.
Yeah, shout out to the Shake and Bake crew. That was a fun tilt today. It was good.
That was a good hockey game. That was a high-level hockey game out there. Let's get back to Scheif. The comment was made to me in the chat room, the live chat room here tonight, that Mark Scheifele had, to a degree, this or last game reverted to the Mark Scheifele of last season. A, do you think that is too harsh of a comment? And B, regardless of what you feel about that, what do you think led to him bouncing back the way that he did tonight?
Yeah, I don't think that, that was a backslide game or maybe 3 plays, but I don't think it was something that, again, I told you after the last game, I was not concerned about that becoming a recurring theme or a bad habit. What we've seen from the very beginning is that Rick Bowness has been able to resonate with Mark Scheifele. Mark has said countless times he wants to be coached. So, part of wanting to be coached is sometimes in the video session, the video is not kind, and the video would not have been kind the other night. But guess what? Instead of pouting about it or worrying about it, Mark went out and had a great game. 2 goals and an assist, but what you saw was a great effort throughout the contest. And the other thing too, one thing people used to get on Mark about was his celebrating by himself or whatever. And to me, both times on the setups, he's pointing immediately to the teammate that sets him up. To me, Mark has done a great job on the leadership side, on the improving his all-around game, and obviously on the goal-scoring side. 28 this year is an incredible number for a guy who has been in the 30s before. But this is a guy who's going to be pushing 40 plus this year. I wasn't concerned. I'm not surprised he bounced back. And again, Rick expected him to bounce back too. He knows these are proud guys. Mark would have been one of those guys that he challenged, right? Mark was a guy who had an off night against the Leafs, and again, I think it was more to do with trying to do too much than not enough. And last year people were wondering why the effort level wasn't higher. I don't think there have been many times this year at all where you could question Mark's effort. I don't even think it was a matter of, again, on the first goal by Matthews, sure, you can call it a bad effort when he went to stick check and got beat on the play, but the second turnover was more trying to make something happen. So not surprised by the effort. And I also think I liked the combination that they landed on eventually with Mark Scheifele playing with Blake Wheeler and Nikolai Ehlers. We talked a lot the other night about having a little bit extra speed on that line. And I think you saw Scheifele really start to settle in, and I think it also helped Cole Perfetti. That's something too, not to shift gears, but what did you think of Perfetti with Kyle Connor and Dubois? That's something you and I have been talking about for a couple weeks here, but we wanted to have a look at it. And we were curious when Rick Bowness would go to it, if he would at all.
Yeah, so it was interesting to see them go back to that. This is another one of those. I remember I gave, because, we talk about Paul Maurice, and I think there's a lot of people who think Paul Maurice was a source of a lot of the problems. And a lot of times when you focus on the problems, you don't see some of the solutions. And one of the things that we talked about early on was Paul Maurice's first instinct was to put Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor together. turns out that was a pretty good instinct, right? And I have to be honest, when they first put those two players together, when Pierre-Luc Dubois arrived, it seemed crazy to me, right? Like you've got this one guy who's essentially a bowling ball, and you've got this one guy who's, a laser beam out there, and yet it works, and it definitely works. Now, the first instinct, or at least last season, was to have Cole Perfetti on that line alongside with those two players. And once again, we have to admit, I think people would have to admit, this was a good instinct to have. Cole Perfetti is working in that situation, one of the fewer times that we've seen him in that situation this year. So someone already mentioned it earlier on, what I refer to as the snake charmer offense that players like Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele can revert to, and how I think that it can be problematic because it's the type of offense that, while it looks really pretty and it looks really great when you pull it off against lower level teams, I don't think you're scoring a lot of goals like that in the playoffs. Now, but it doesn't mean that I don't think there's value to that type of offense and having that tool in your toolbox. And Cole Perfetti is the kind of player, I think, that can play that kind of game. And I think he's learned it from those two players. But you don't want that to be his identity. You want that to be one of the tools he has in his toolbox. Now, when you move it back over and you put him on a line with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, you don't have a lot of choices when it comes to those players. Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to crash the net. He's going to take the puck there, and he's going to try and create chaos. So if you want to score, you need to get down and you need to try and capitalize on that chaos, right? And arguably, that's what he did on his goal tonight, right? Other than that, though, you've got a player like Kyle Connor who's a little bit more direct and uses his speed to draw guys in. Not so much the snake charmer style where you're waiting off to the side and trying to draw people out of position. Kyle Connor is just so fast that as he slashes through the defense, passing lanes are opening and closing, opening and closing, opening and closing, because he's moving so fast to get through there. So what you have to do is you have to see where he's going and get into the spots where those passing lanes are going to open up. And he had that very, very close opportunity earlier in the game, and that nice shot off the bar that so many people in here thought was in and out of the net. Me being one of them, I thought that had happened. But I thought he did a good job of capitalizing on the ways that Kyle Connor generates offense and the ways that Pierre-Luc Dubois generates offense. And I think it's pretty interesting because if you take a look at those three different kind of players, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor and Cole Perfetti, they're all three very different hockey players. And a lot of times you would think that three very different hockey players would not mix together well. I think there's a good mix there. And I think we go back to last season when this was the line that the Winnipeg Jets started with. And you have to go back into the vaults, into a place where a lot of people don't want to go. People don't want to admit that there were things that did work and things that were found out, and there were right decisions made under the old regime. And this is going back to another one of those right decisions that were made and are paying dividends for the Winnipeg Jets this season.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, we'll be curious to see where it goes. I mean, Perfetti, like we said, I like the concept of putting him with Adam Lowry to kind of get his legs and get his feet. I know. To get his feet moving, not as a long-term solution, as we both discussed and agreed on after the last game. But again, I think that playing with Connor and Dubois, I think, could unlock some of that passing ability, and we'll see where it lands longer term. But we're both in agreement here. These are much more lines that we would be able to get behind rather than what we saw the other night, I think. And there again, too, I mean, Barron was back with Adam Lowry, and they look good together like they normally do. So, I mean, I think that's another benefit for the bigger picture, too. But we'll see where it goes from here.
So, Ken, I love this question. What does it say about a coach like Rick Bowness to last game go and entirely shake things up with lines and it bombed the way that it did the last game, and to a degree come back mostly to, I mean, I know he didn't go entirely back to what's working, but he basically took away the idea of, I'm going to break this second line apart and put one on the first line, one on the second line, one on the third line. At least he reverts the third line to what it was before. And I know that he has a little bit of a switch up on those top two lines, but reuniting Wheeler and Scheifele to me is a little bit of a, okay, maybe I took things too far. Putting Cole Perfetti or reuniting the third line is another acknowledgement to me. Maybe I took things too far. What do you think it says about Rick Bowness that in an effort to get something from his team that he did not get, rather than be stubborn and force those players into a spot where he says, you're going to stay here until I get what I want. One of those, the beatings will continue until the morale improves kind of approaches.
Yeah,
what does it say about him that he made the concessions that he made on the lines tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's a concession to a degree, but to me, the bigger issue is Ehlers. Keeping Ehlers and Scheifele together, knowing that speed element is something that they could unlock with one another. So, I mean, I don't think it was an overreaction to do what he did. It was more of a snap them to attention. And like you said, kind of get away from the snake charmer kind of offense. But I think he just wanted to find out a couple of other things. And, Morgan Barron, it was more a chance for him to show what he could do in a digger kind of a role on a skilled line. So, I mean, we've also talked about this tons. I mean, Wheeler and Dubois have played well together before. They'll probably play well together again. But for right now, I like the other part of it too is, this is the other issue that the Jets have had over the years with Ehlers, where he loves playing right wing, but sometimes he's a little bit too east-west when he's playing right wing, because when he's on his offside, he kind of gets a little bit more cross ice and wants to interchange a little bit more. Whereas when he plays left wing, he's also Mark Scheifele's first option. Not that Mark doesn't pass on his backhand, but he's often getting the puck because of his speed and his ability to push up the ice. I think sometimes playing him on the left side can unlock some certain things with Ehlers that he doesn't always get on the right side. We know obviously his one-timer is more of a weapon when he plays the right wing, but I like that element of it too. And like I said, the Jets had a lot to like in the game. I know a lot of people are saying Ottawa's not a very good team, but Ottawa plays hard. That's the one thing. Are they the most structured team? No. Are they the most offensive team? No. But you have to respect them. And the big thing for the Jets, when I talk about structure, the goal from Ottawa is a clean face-off win by Claude Giroux that's in the net before A, Carson Kuhlman can get there to get in the shooting lane, and B, Hellebuyck, he had barely any time to react. So, and I think in a game where Hellebuyck I thought played quite well, he didn't really have much of a chance on the only goal. But that's the only goal they gave up, and it's not like Connor Hellebuyck was facing 20 grade A scoring chances in that game. So, I don't know. I thought it was a good effort all around. And to your point, Rick's not a stubborn guy, Sean. That's the thing about him. He wasn't going to just say, you know what, I'm going to stick with this during a 5-game losing streak. He was looking for solutions, so he tried to look for a couple other solutions, and he found a couple of really good fits in my opinion.
Okay, I've always said this about bosses. Good bosses don't make a lot of mistakes, right? But great bosses make mistakes and correct those mistakes. Good bosses make mistakes, and then they continue trying to justify those mistakes. That's probably something that a lot of people in any walk of life have seen before. Those bosses that are just like, no, I'm right regardless of what happens here, and I'm going to keep doing this until everyone realizes that I'm right, correct? But this is one of the things that I really like about Rick Bowness. I like the fact that on a night where things did not work out, rather than blaming it on his players, he decided he was going to go in a different direction, even if the different direction to a large degree was going back to something that he was trying to get away from in the last game. Make no mistake about it. I think Rick Bowness was really trying to get away from Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler that last game. And the fact that he was willing to go back in that direction, I give him credit. And I think players will give him credit for that as well, because to me, this is a little bit of an admission of a mistake. That's the way I take it. I take it as Rick Bowness saying, I thought this would work. It didn't work. And rather than me trying to pound this home, I'm going to say, fine, you guys make mistakes. I make mistakes. Let's work this out together. I'm going to go through a wall a lot more for a coach who is willing to admit his mistakes, willing to work with me on finding something that works, rather than sticking and sitting with those for a while. There's a lot of coaches out there. In fact, Ken, I would argue the vast majority of coaches would have said, we only gave them one game. It was against the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is one of the top teams in the league. Let's give these lines a little bit more time to gel. I think him going back the way that he did was an admission to his team that he tried something, but he still thought, I tried to send a message last game. I think the message is still sent, but the way I tried to send the message is not going to work long term. So let's move back and away from that. I'm okay with that. I've got all day for a coach who will handle it like that.
Just because something doesn't work doesn't mean it's a mistake.
Sure, but well, I'll say this: if it's not a mistake, why did he not stick with those lines?
I don't know. Just wanted to test her out. That's all.
Ken over there. It got
it's called a pregnant pause, buddy. It's a pregnant pause. Okay. Pause for effect. Pause for effect. Okay.
You were that was a pregnant pause for effect. That's what that was. I think I broke Ken's brain. Honestly, I'm taking that one as a victory. I'm taking it as a victory, and we're moving on to the next topic.
You should.
I thought this was pretty funny. Kenny's water bottle said this earlier on, and now my computer is freezing up. But I'm going to read it here.
Sorry.
I said this earlier on. You don't need a fridge when you've got Renny's cold takes to keep your lamplighter frosty and refreshing. What are you cheering about? The part of this that I thought was funny is because it made me realize in this moment that, like, behind the scenes when I'm sitting in my office downstairs and Ken is doing his thing, Kenny's water bottle or someone like this is making a comment like that, and then there's like a collective chuckle around the city of Winnipeg from a whole bunch of people who are laughing at this. And I didn't want to point this out because I don't want Kenny's water bottle to know he's having that effect. But T. Will is in the room and he knows this is happening too when he makes those same comments. And T. Will, you should have seen his eyes light up when everyone laughed. He was like, "Oh, this is great! People love this stuff." So no doubt T. Will be doubling down. Everyone knows the hat's out of the bag. We love to take viewer questions. One of the things we haven't got to set up and we hope to do for our next couple of shows is to get a computer sitting here, Ken, so that the people who are here can come up and actually join the show, ask some questions, challenge some of our takes if they so choose to. If they're brave enough to do so.
You mean challenge some of your takes?
Yeah, that's a good point. We are in the house of liquid courage, so we can go in that direction. We'll have to save that for next show. If I could just get this computer to work. A question from Rob Somerville, and I like this question a lot. It's about time someone asked this question, and Ken, I want to dig into this. I don't know if I can get it on the screen, but Rob Somerville asks, question for Kenny and Renny.
Tell me what
Given
time.
the record that the Jets have amassed thus far into the season, do you think the Jets would have the same or similar record with Trotz behind the bench? What are your thoughts? I love this question.
Oh, it's interesting. Sure. Yeah, people here, Barry who? I don't think that they're going to go with that completely. What I would say would be similar, Sean. I don't think you could come in here and say it would be better. And why I'll point to that is simple. I mean, if you look at the some of the names or who were involved in the interviewing process, Sean, one of them is about to get hired on Monday by the Vancouver Canucks in a story that's been absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
I got no problem with Rick Tocchet taking over, but to be leaving Bruce Boudreau hanging in the wind, twisting in the wind the way that he had, I think has been absolutely horrendous. And good on the Canucks fans for the way that they've handled it. But so you got Rick Tocchet was involved late in the proceedings. Jim Montgomery, we know was involved late in the proceedings. What has Jim done? Well, his team has 5 regulation losses as they're approaching their 50th game of the season. And, Bruce Cassidy is a guy the Jets would have been interested in, but obviously his preference was to go to Vegas. So, I mean, 3 of the other coaches are going to the All-Star game, So Barry Trotz is an excellent coach, and I think he would have made a big impact here. But I think his impact would have been very similar to what Rick Bowness has done. I mean, it's not like they went out and got a watered-down version of Barry Trotz. They got someone who basically stands and has the same core values. So to me, I don't know that it would have been much difference in terms of the record. I mean, it's a great question by Rob, but I think Barry Trotz's same goals would have been what Rick Bowness has looked to accomplish, right? I mean, he had to get to Mark Scheifele, get him to buy in. He has. Pierre-Luc Dubois had to play a two-way game. He has. Blake Wheeler has handled the removal of the captaincy very well. That's something that Barry probably would have handled as well. And they needed elite goaltending. So, I mean, if you're looking at the priority list, it wouldn't have been any different between the two players. So, to suggest Barry would have had a much better record, I don't think is fair. Would it have been slightly better? Possibly, but I don't think it's a guarantee. But what I would say is that, like I said, I mean, if the Jets couldn't get Barry Trotz, I don't think it was you and I agree on this completely. Getting Rick Bowness was not a big drop down from what Barry Trotz would have provided. And I think that Barry Trotz is an excellent coach.
So I agree with you on one part. I think both these coaches would have been able to identify the problem with the Winnipeg Jets. And my tendency is to say I think their records would be somewhat similar. But there are differences between these coaches. Like they go about they're trying to do the same thing, but they're going about it in different ways. So the one thing about this team, one thing that blows me away is teams struggle with culture for years. I mean, take a look at what's happening with the Vancouver Canucks right now. When culture goes wrong with a team, it can take years to fix that. And I think the culture went wrong with the Winnipeg Jets last season. Now, when Rick Bowness came in here, one of the first things that he said was when you dip below the playoff, when a good team dips below the playoff line, you have to snap it back, right? You can't let this become a pattern. You need to be the kind of team that takes that year, sheds it off, and gets back at it right away. Or else next thing you know, you miss the playoffs another year, or a bad start to the season, suddenly you're struggling, and suddenly that like feeling of failure is setting in, and suddenly that becomes part of your culture. So the task for Rick Bowness was to come in and to turn this around, and to turn it around right quick. And he manages that by calling every single player before the season, raising the expectations, not only for what they are as a team, but in the case of a guy like Josh Morrissey, on what you can be as a player. I don't see you, listen, I see you as a great player, but I see you as a player who's not anywhere near what your potential is. Someone calls me up, if my boss calls me that before I start a job or before I start a work project or something like that, I'm going to be showing up to that job. If I'm a carpenter and we're going to go build a house and I get that kind of a call from my head coach, I'm going to be there 10 minutes early, ready to swing the hammer, doing whatever it takes to get the job done right. So he handled that the way that this team needed that handled. Now, Barry Trotz is a coach who went into the New York Islanders, a team that was the second worst defensive team in the NHL, and in 1 year immediately turned them around and made them the best defensive team in the NHL. So a stark, quick turnaround is kind of something both of these two coaches are capable of, right? The question becomes, is it the soft sell that we know that Rick Bowness is known for, or is it kind of the more direct approach that we know that Rick Bowness takes? If you hear the stories from behind the scenes, and both of us have talked
you said
to players
Bowness both times
with either team. Sorry?
Did you mean Trotz for the first one? You said Bowness both
times.
Sorry,
I meant Rick Bowness and the soft approach that he's taken here. Barry Trotz, who's a little bit more stern, a little bit more demanding out of what he wants. Now, that worked when he was in New York. What he did with that team, you can't argue with what he did in that team in such a short time and the quick turnaround that he had. You can't really argue with what Rick Bowness is doing here. The question is the very direct approach that Barry Trotz would have taken as compared to this kind of fatherly, like, I'm not mad at you, I'm just upset approach that Rick Bowness takes, right? Like, my dad was like that. I hated that. My dad would never come out and be like, you messed this up, you did this, you did that. He would just give me the, you know what? I would have expected better from you. And then you felt terrible, right? You totally let the old man down, and you just spent all your time after that trying to make sure that you impressed him. Brendan Dillon said that's exactly what Rick Bowness does with this team. He just walks in, you didn't have a good game, and he's not yelling and chewing you out. He's just saying, that's not the kind of plays you make. You can do better. And then they're like, yeah, okay, I want to do better. I think that the Jets, for the most part, could have adopted to either approach, but here's where I think the big thing and the big differences between these two teams and what I think Rick Bowness was more suited for. The idea that he took the C off of Blake Wheeler, it's happened in the past. We don't talk about it as much. This is huge. This was a huge move. It's worked for this team. It's allowed the leadership to spread around the room, but this could have been a grenade in that room. Now, credit to Blake Wheeler for how he's handled it, But I do think that one of the reasons he's handled the way he has is because I think Rick Bowness's approach to doing it fits better with the response that you got from Blake Wheeler. I don't know that there would have been as much caring and understanding in that process coming from Barry Trotz as there would have been coming from Rick Bowness in this situation. I think that was the biggest landmine you could imagine walking into that dressing room, and the fact that Rick Bowness was able to navigate that and remove that mine without it blowing up is the reason why this team was able to start quickly and well. But I also think that landmine was the landmine that the previous coaching regime did not feel that they could ever take on and didn't handle it, because there was a lot of potential there. And I think we all talked about it behind the scenes in the offseason, that stripping Wheeler of the captaincy could have been a big problem. I contend it would have been a bigger problem under Trotz's coaching style than it is under Rick Bowness's coaching style.
Yeah, I mean, I would counter a couple quick things. In terms of Trotz, I mean, the one other thing that we're not sure of, I mean, yes, Barry coached Roman Josi, who's very active. I mean, would the Jets' defense be as involved offensively as they had been this year under Rick Bowness if Barry Trotz had taken over? I mean, he's known for clamp down hockey. He's not really known for the second wave and the defenseman scoring 40-plus goals, which was the goal that Rick set for his group. So that would be one thing. Yes, he's also, John Carlson had some great years in Washington when he was there as well, but I'm not sure that Josh Morrissey would have got the same kind of green light. I'm sure that he would have, expressed confidence in his abilities. Would Barry have gone out and say, "Hey, I need you to be in the top 10 in the Norris balloting,"
Yeah.
And I want you to be a 70 to 80 point player? I don't know. I mean, it's possible, but the style would have been different for sure. And in terms of Wheeler, I mean, Rick Bowness knew what he was getting into here. There's no way that Rick Bowness made that decision unilaterally, Sean. That's just not the way that it would have worked. You talked about Rick calling every player. That would have come from part of those conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it could have been a grenade for sure, but I mean, even Kevin Cheveldayoff talked about it. I mean, the players wanted to take more ownership. That it was as simple as that. It wasn't that Blake wasn't going to be asked to do any leading. He's done plenty of leading this year. He just hasn't had to wear a letter to do so. So, I mean, I think it's a great debate. I mean, ultimately, we have no idea whether it was going to work or not, and that's why I say, I mean, all these people saying, well, you know what, Pete DeBoer, it was time for him to leave Vegas. But guess what? He's coaching a first-place team. Bruce Cassidy, it was time to leave Boston. Didn't mean he was a bad coach. It meant he needed a new challenge. And he's had one, and he's done a great job with Vegas. So, and it was same for Rick Bowness. I mean, Rick Bowness did a very good job in Dallas. But, Sean, we've been to Dallas, twice already. They needed a change in Dallas. And that had nothing to do with Rick Bowness, the person, or the coach. It just was time for a different coach there as well. So, and that also that sparked a fire for Rick Bowness. I mean, he wasn't ready to be told that he was retiring. This guy loves hockey more than anything. So he had an opportunity to go and coach another team, and he's done a fabulous job with it. So I think he deserves a lot of credit. And you know what? When Barry Trotz gets his next job, wherever it is, I expect him to do a good job because he's a smart coach.
I got to say this. First off, comment says, would you trust Renny to build your house?
You should.
Renny, listen, Renny's got skills. You guys don't know, but Renny used to operate a roofing company in another life. I've got a construction background, and I've renovated my entire house. You can stop on by in the summer. Kenny's going to be there after I build my deck and my outdoor sauna and my cold pool tub in the backyard. And anyone who's trashing Renny's ability to do so, especially you, Comment, is not invited to my cold pool and my sauna. Sorry, it's not happening. Backyard party. A lot of people talking about Arnie here. I want to get to
speaking
Arnie
of house, we should give a quick hit
590 the other day with the boys out of Toronto. They brought up Rick Arneal and Nick Kiprio has had a really good, interesting take on Scott Arneal that I don't think enough people are talking about, not locally, not anywhere. But first, people are already bringing the Lou-isms into the show. I want you to give a shout out to our main man, Sweet Lou.
Yeah, you bet. For all the folks in the realty game, if you're looking to buy, looking to sell, curious what your house is worth, maybe what that house down the street is worth, or one in another market, part of the city, you can contact our main man, Sweet Lou Ferlin, at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty. 204-791-9971 or at the office, 204-989-5000. Lou's email is lou@loufurlan.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. And the website is loufurlan.ca. Lou Furlan, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, and which is why we are proud to have him on board as one of our excellent sponsors.
Gotta love Sweet Lou. Roy Mack says, Rennie's roofing is like his takes, lots of holes in them. Okay, that's a good one. Kim Sawchuk says, Rennie's Ramshackle Roofing Company has a very good reputation in Lactabon. I've heard of it. This was a good name. I should have gone with this.
It would have been a good name.
Ramshackle Roofing. That would sell. That would sell in a town like Lactabon. They'd love that kind of stuff. Okay, let's move on. Some of the people we're talking about, Scott Arneal. Let's see if I have any of these. Chris, Jets fan, says, love Coach Arneal too. I think that quietly, Scott Arneal, I don't know how many times he's been on the radar as a head coach across the league before this. And sometimes it can be hard to have been an assistant coach for a long time and kind of get into that upper echelon. So, for example, you're talking about Rick Tocchet. I mean, Rick Tocchet was a head coach at one point and has left the game for quite a long time now, and it's going to walk right back into a head coaching position if what we hear is happening in Vancouver. It's going to be happening. I don't know if we want to touch on Vancouver. Let's maybe keep it to this. But Rick Bowness is a perfect example of that. Rick Bowness is a guy that spent a good chunk of his early career as a head coach, became an assistant coach, and then kind of defined as that. And then, to me, the Jets are the luckiest team going right now, because the fact that he was branded as an assistant coach, even though he went as a head coach and took a team to the Stanley Cup, one of 4 coaches in the last 3 years to take a team to the Stanley Cup, he's branded as this assistant captain and couldn't really shake that label. Because of that, he's still waiting in this game of musical chairs after the Jets strike out on Trotz, and he's still there. I think the Jets, you want to talk about a team of luck. All the reffing calls that people think they haven't got, maybe they lost all their luck in having Rick Bowness still available by the time they got around to hiring him. But Scott Arneal, I think, is another one of these guys who's been labeled as an assistant coach, and I don't know that there's a lot of people that take him seriously as a head coaching prospect. Nick Kyprios on Toronto radio. No one from Winnipeg is hearing this, so there's no reason for him to say this to curry favor with fans. Nick Kyprios brought this up to me and said, are people talking about Scott Arneal as a soon-to-be head coach in the NHL? My response was, if they're not, they should be, because if you take a look at all of the challenges he's done here, what he's done with the penalty kill, what he did when Rick Bowness was out, there's no challenge that he hasn't met this year and absolutely crushed. Do you think that the league, other than Nick Kyprios or the people here in Winnipeg, are starting to wake up to how good of a coach Scott Arneal is?
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is a very well-respected coach. Yes, he worked with Alain Vigneault for a long time as an associate, and then went to Washington with Peter Laviolette as an associate there as well. I mean, this is a guy who was involved in he was one of the finalists for the Jets job as the head coach. So, I mean, it was also very difficult for him to get that close and then say, yes, I will take an associate job, even though I was, maybe the runner-up even, if not just a finalist for the job itself. I mean, I've known Scott for a long time. I mean, he was the assistant coach with the Moose when I started covering the minor leagues, way back in the early 2000s. So this is a guy who he's had other, yes, he had things didn't go as smoothly with the Columbus Blue Jackets as he had hoped, probably. He's grown a lot as a coach since that time. He's had interviews for, head coaching positions with the Anaheim Ducks and I believe the Calgary Flames, maybe some others, but those two for certain were situations where he got down to the latter stages, and he's a guy who has always believed in himself. He's always wanted to get better. He's not a guy who has to have the spotlight. I mean, he always is a guy who's. It's interesting. I mean, we talk about the historical side of things. I mean, he's always been a guy who's been comfortable riding shotgun. That goes back to playing with the Cornwall Royals with Dale Hawerchuk. I mean, they got drafted together in Winnipeg. They played together for a while too, and he's always been comfortable in that associate role because he's not a guy who needs to get all the credit, but he's willing to put in the work. So, I mean, I think that, we know Rick Bowness is 67 years old. I mean, have the Jets set up a succession plan? I mean, I don't think it's it's not necessarily an intentional one, but they know they have head coach in waiting potentially on the staff. But Scott's not the kind of head coach in waiting that is trying to undermine the current coach so he can get the job. I mean, the Jets also have another great coach in Brad Lauer, who was had a great year with the Oil Kings last year, and Marty Johnston is a guy who doesn't get a lot of enough credit either for the work that he's been doing and rising up the coaching ranks. And obviously we know the kind of job that Wade Flaherty has done with the Jets as well. But yeah, I mean, I think Scott Arniel, it's a long-winded way of saying I expect Scott Arniel to be a head coach in the NHL. In the next, whether it's 2 or 3 years, whatever that number is, and whether it's with the Jets or if it's with someone else, we don't know. But I do think that he is a guy who has head coaching qualities written all over him. He's an incredibly smart guy, and the Jets have definitely been a benefactor of his smarts and his ability to finally live in his adopted home. I mean, what some other people may not know, Scott Arniel is a Winnipegger. I mean, he became a Winnipegger. He married a Winnipeg girl, and this is where he spent his off seasons. I mean, and now he has a chance to live in his adopted hometown, coach for a team that he's wanted to become the head coach of, and may one day still do that. But I agree with you. I mean, the Jets penalty kill is something we've talked about so often. Yes, one year they were in the top 10, but for the most part, Jets penalty kill has been something that's let them down for the better part of a decade. And now they've got one of the best penalty killing units in the league, and Scott Arniel deserves credit for for the work that he's done with that unit. And Rick Bowness was asked about him this morning in Ottawa by the reporters on the scene, and he was glowing about how his ability to prepare both the penalty killers for what they're about to see and also preparing Connor Hellebuck for where those shots that they would be giving up would be coming from. And that's been a big impact on how the Jets got 30 wins in 47 games, Sean. I mean, we expected the Jets to be improved, but I mean, that's a pretty darn impressive record if you ask me.
No doubt. I wanted to bring this up. T-Shoe says, Kipper, Renny is listening to Kipper, laughing it up. I'm going to say this, and it may not be news Jets fans want to hear right now. Nick Kypreos was a sneaky good behind-the-scenes guy when he worked on the desk for our trade deadlines. Go check the receipts. Nick Kypreos broke a lot of stuff that a lot of other people didn't. He's plugged in. He's connected, which I think if you're a Jets fan, you are worried about his Pierre-Luc Dubois take, because if anyone had heard this over the last week, Nick Kypreos came out and said there is no way at all that Pierre-Luc Dubois is staying in Winnipeg. He says it's a done deal and he's moving on. I'll say this, when you have people who are plugged in the way that some of these guys, some of these insiders are plugged in, and they come with that kind of fire and that kind of smoke, they're usually doing it because they know something that a lot of people don't know. Guys like that who have to worry about their reputation, they don't. If they are probing something or not fully invested in something, it's a dangerous game to go all in on it, because if you do, it stands out that you were wrong. And I know people don't want to hear that, but you'll notice this. Listen, Elliot Friedman, Darren Dreger, Pierre LeBrun, these guys aren't batting 1,000. They're not batting 1,000. None of these guys are batting 1,000. But they look like they're right most often, because when they're right, they're really loud about it. But when they're wrong, or when they're on a little bit of shaky ground, they're not that loud about it. And I'll tell you this, for Nick Kypreos to come out and be as loud as he was about his take on Pierre-Luc Dubois tells me that Nick Kypreos has heard something, and I think it would be something that Jets fans would not like very much. Ken, before we shut this down, I just want your take. A lot of noise about Bo Horvat being the focus of probably a lot of teams around the league, but the four biggest teams, what do we have here? We've got the Seattle Kraken, we've got the New Jersey Devils, the Winnipeg Jets, and who's the other team in that?
Well, I think Boston was one of the other ones that's been mentioned. Yes. And I know, too, maybe with the Pacioretty news, it's potential that maybe Carolina might circle back, although they, their attitude towards rentals is not necessarily that they want to give up a lot, but maybe he'd be a guy they might be considering going long-term either. I mentioned Horvat when the Canucks came through town, I think, already in December. I was on with Dan Murphy also during one of the regional broadcast intermissions, and I honestly think that the Jets are looking at a guy like Horvat as Pierre-Luc Dubois insurance, to be quite frank. I mean, would they love to sign Dubois? Of course they would, and they're going to try to do it. But if they can't, acquiring a guy like Bo Horvat would allow them to have even more depth at center, and it also he might be a guy that would take 8 for 8 here. And yes, I mean, you and I were talking about this earlier at the rink, but of course he's waited this long. Why would he sign before testing out the waters? But I think the Jets can make as competitive an offer for Bo Horvat as anyone else in the league can. So I do think he would be another guy. I mean, I think Timo Meier is a guy also I've mentioned, but I mean, I think Horvat makes sense on a lot of levels. He doesn't play the same kind of game as Dubois in terms of that power forward element, and his engagement is high, but it's not in the same physical brute strength kind of way. But he's a sniper. I understand his shooting percentage is a bit higher this year, but Bo Horvat's not going to be a guy who signs 8 for 8 and all of a sudden falls off a cliff and goes from scoring 40 to goes to 20. I don't see that happening. But I do think that he's a guy that would be on the radar for a lot of teams. But I'm just curious what the price tag is. I mean, he might have to try and win. Might have to try and win the bidding war for him. And what does that look like? Does that mean it's a Ville Heinola and a top prospect and whatever else? I mean, we'll have to see where that's at. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's definitely got to be on the radar. And when guys like Elliott are mentioning him in the conversation, it means the Jets are definitely sniffing around.
I don't want anyone to feel cheated
here.
Yeah,
exactly. Especially Candace.
There's enough time for us to listen to some more of Tristan's awesome music. So let's make this a late breaking version of Sean's Headband Kenny and Renny show. Here we go.
Give the people what they want.
Ken, play the music.
Beautiful. Give the people what they want.
All right, time to hand out the Home Field Dig Deeper Award. It was neat. I came in here, Ken, and I saw a lot of the people who were coming to the show had also been our Dig Deeper winners, and so they've gone
Indeed.
down. So first thing I saw was Eric Hjorleifson. Yeah, close enough, I think.
Well done.
For an Irish guy, I think I pulled off some Icelandic talk. Not so bad there. First thing I saw was Eric taking his Dig Deeper shovel to the trunk, and then when I saw people picked up a bunch more. I know that our guys there had sent some more down here, but they're going fast. I think there's only a couple more left here. But that's their problem. They got to restock it, and so let's
it's restocked. We got them.
Let's make their job a little harder. Listen. I will not stand for besmirching Renny in this podcast, but even I have to admit when I've been bested. This is such a good burn here. Roy Mack says Renny's roofing is like his takes, lots of holes in them. This is just this is great stuff. This is perfect. Roy Mack, who is at the last event here, he's going to have to come back here. I know he loves the pizza and the beers here, but he's going to have to come back and grab himself a Home Field Dig Deeper shovel. He dug deeper on this one tonight. There was a lot of good Renny burns here tonight, but this one took the cake. That was a great one. I'm glad all of you weren't around when I was roofing, because I wouldn't have got a lot of business if I would have had you guys building my my commercials for me. But that's it for us, everybody. Hey, I want to thank everybody who showed up here today. T. Will, I think, has something that he wants to try and pull off here. What do we got?
I got a bit of a surprise for you. I'm sorry. I don't mean to take over your show.
Well, you just did. You just did.
I will a little bit. I will. Hi, Ken. Hi, Kenny. This is me. Yes, he's our guest.
Yes, welcome.
I apologize to the chat right now. I know I thought I'd be told.
If you wanted to know what bad takes looks like personified, here it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Says the guy who handed out 4 shovels to him.
Exactly. So four shovels. Just remember, 4 shovels here. Okay. So I just wanted to apologize, because I realized with Renny, I don't know where we went off the rails here. I realized I gave him bad burns, and he would desperately flail at giving me bad burns back. Like, I understand the whole dynamic we had here, but I don't want this to continue. I want to kind of bury the hatchet. So as a matter of fact, I had a peace offering.
Okay. All right.
So I talked to the Sportsnet brass. I created the next big Kenny and Renny shirt.
Oh.
For the Sportsnet shop. Okay. So I've talked to Sportsnet Brass. They're ready to launch it. They're ready to go. They just need the go-ahead from Kenny and Renny. So I just wanted to kind of show you what I had here. So after the whole big Hockey Night in Canada thing with Kenny and where Kenny had a big moment on Hockey Night in Canada, I just wanted to show you kind of I had it created. So here was kind of a tribute to Hockey Night in Canada. Kind of like the big moments from Kenny and Renny Hockey Night in Canada. So here on the front, I show Kenny Hockey Night in Canada, his first big moment Hockey Night in Canada, and then on the back, it was Renny's big moment on the back as well, where he kind of showed when he was showing his side. So that was the best when he was demonstrating that as well. So, as an angsty teenager, so I mean, I just wanted to say, like, that was my peace offering. So they're ready to launch. I mean, Sportsnet Brass has said they think they're going to sell 1 million of these. They're ready to go. So Renny, you just tell us, you just give me the go ahead, and they're ready to launch. So they got them in the warehouses right now. They're ready to go.
Oh, hey, listen, well done. I'll tell you this. For anyone who is asking the question, will they let anyone on this show? The answer is yes. That's what it is. Hey, I want to say too, Will, that was awesome. Everyone here was excellent tonight. I know that people had to keep quiet. We're going to get our audio situation figured out here, so people are going to be a little more loud and boisterous. Right now, we didn't have this piped through stereos or speakers, so people had to be quiet to hear us in real time. Rennie's got that kind of voice that carries. Kenny's got that kind of voice that sounds like he's speaking to his inside pocket. So people had to kind of listen as best as they possibly could. But thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate so much that you come here and spend the time with us. We love spending time in this space right in here, but to be able to spend time with you in this space like this right here means so much to us, being able to put faces to names and have conversations with everyone behind the scenes, and also meet people like Richard Medeiros tonight, who designed our logo, and to meet Tristan, who is responsible for all this music, which has been such a hot topic of conversation. It means a ton. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you for your takes as usual. And you in the chat room, except for you, Roy Mac. You took that too far. That was too hard of a burn tonight. But that's okay. Renny could take it. He's got big shoulders. He was an angsty teenager, as you saw at one time. He can handle it. Thank you so much for being you. And finally, for us, we just want to say, if you appreciate the conversations happening in these spaces, please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep these conversations going in these spaces. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, the Trans-Canada Brewing Company, who were such great hosts here and just knocked it out of the park here, as they always do. The Kenny and Renny OGs, the Johnston Group, Lou Ferlin, and Home Field. Thank you so much for that. That's it. Quick turnaround. So David Zirk, if you want your frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, you've got very short amount of time to do it. Make sure you message Renny, SN, Sean Reynolds, and Roy Mack. Of course, you message me there as well to get your Dig Deeper, your Home Field Dig Deeper award. Thanks, everybody. We will see you tomorrow night.